Thank you for tuning in to Zim News Beat TV.
Of Section 305 of the Constitution, as read with subsection 1 of Section 28 of the Public Finance Management Act, Chapter 22, subsection 19, and paragraph M of Section 2, subsection 1 of the Public Finance Management General Amendment Regulations 2021, number 1, published in Statutory Instrument 127A of 2021, provides that every year the minister responsible for finance must present to the National Assembly a statement of the estimated revenues and expenditures of the government in the next financial year. In compliance with these provisions, Mr. Speaker, I therefore move that leave be granted to present a statement of the estimated revenues and expenditures of the Republic of Zimbabwe for the 2025 financial year, and to make provisions for matters ancillary and incidental to this purpose. Mr. Speaker, the year 2024 has been an extraordinary year, presenting both challenges and opportunities. The challenges have impacted on the economy, the people's lives, and progress towards achieving the nation's Vision 2030 of becoming an upper middle income society. The economy has therefore shown remarkable resilience, reflecting government's successful implementation of strategic reforms and policies since 2018 through the Transitional Stabilization Program, TSP, and the National Development Strategy 1, NDS1, which is coming to an end at the end of 2025. However, there is still need to entrench economic resilience, especially against climate change and volatility of commodity prices. Hence the theme of the 2025 national budget of building resilience for sustained economic transformation. Before I go into the details of the budget, let me convey my gratitude to His Excellency, the President, Comrade Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, for his leadership, guidance, and wisdom in the formulation of this budget. I also want to recognize the valuable inputs from the two Vice Presidents, Honorable General Retired Dr. C.G. D.N. Chiwenga, and Honorable Colonel Retired KCD Mohadi, as budget, finance, and investment promotion, and other parliamentary committees, individual parliamentarians, government departments, industry, development partners, academia, civil society, bankers, the youth, women, small-scale entrepreneurs, among others, went a long way in shaping this budget. Please allow me now to turn to the details of the 2025 national budget. Let me begin with economic developments, Mr. Speaker. The subdued global economic performance during 2024 is having a negative impact on the domestic economy through lower international mineral commodity prices, except for gold, but also experiencing high borrowing costs. Let me turn specifically to the global economy. Mr. Speaker, global economic growth is projected to hold steady at 3.2% in 2024 and 2025, respectively, according to the October 2024 IMF World Economic Outlook projections. This is due to the slowdown in economic activity across advanced economies and emerging markets. As I'm presenting, Mr. Speaker, If you could turn to the screens, you'll be able to see some charts or slides that will enhance the presentation. So from that slide, you can see various countries and their growth projections for 2025. Downside risks such as climate change, volatile global financial markets, escalating conflicts, heightened policy uncertainty, and increased protectionist measures have the potential to hold back global growth going forward. Let me turn to sub-Saharan Africa. The sub-Saharan Africa region will grow by 3.6% in 2024 and is projected to grow by 4.2% in 2025, reflecting a bullish outlook for the region. This is largely on account of gradual improvements in supply chains and the recovery from the negative effects of earlier weather shocks. You can see a slide there showing the various sub-Saharan African countries. Mr. Speaker said, real GDP growth in Southern Africa, in the SADC region specifically, is projected at 2.5% and 3.3% in 2024 and 2025 respectively. Let me turn to global commodity prices. Despite an anticipated modest decrease in overall commodity prices in 2024-2025, commodity prices are projected to stay above the pre-pandemic levels, but are experiencing a dip in 2025. This reflects enduring supply constraints and demand patterns that have shifted during the post-pandemic recovery period. I now turn to the domestic economy, looking at growth. Mr. Speaker said, the domestic economy is still projected to record a GDP growth rate of 2% in 2024 on account of the impact of the El Nino-induced drought. However, the agricultural sector, which was initially projected to contract by as much as 21%, is now expected to contract by minus 15% on account of a better than anticipated output on wheat and the dairy sector. On the screen, various sectors of the economy. It's all small letters, but those who have a quick eye will be able to see that most sectors, Mr. Speaker said, in fact, all sectors except agriculture for this year are showing a positive rate of growth. And into 2025, all sectors will record a positive rate of growth. In the outlook, economic growth is now projected at 6% in 2025. The anticipated La Nina weather phenomenon, usually associated with normal to above normal rainfall, is going to be a major driver of growth in agriculture and electricity generation. Mr. Speaker said, the 2025 economic growth projections are underpinned by the following broad assumptions. One, a normal to above normal rainfall, which is expected to result in increased agricultural production. Two, a stable exchange rate and low inflation, providing a stable macroeconomic environment and a conducive environment for doing business. Three, tight fiscal and monetary policies being implemented. The attainment of the projected 6% economic growth in 2025 will result in Zimbabwe being one of the fastest growing economies in the region next year. Mr. Speaker said, we continue to innovate as government in trying to assess the state of the economy. So we've developed a composite indicator of economic activity. So the Ministry of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, in collaboration with the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, has developed a composite indicator of economic activity to enhance economic monitoring using high-frequency data. And there's a chart on the screen showing this index, which is in red, and what you have in blue there is the GDP figure. This index
of measuring economic activity complements quarterly GDP figures by providing a comprehensive picture of the economy's performance frequently, and this is critical for urgent urgent and critical policy making and decision making. Let me turn to the foreign currency receipts. The country's external sector position has remained resilient, as reflected by a notable increase in foreign currency receipts, which rose by 17.9% to $10 billion during the first 9 months of 2024. This was from $8.5 billion that was received during the same period last year in 2023. Let me turn to the balance of payments development and outlook. Mr. Speaker, sir, preliminary estimates indicate that the current account balance recorded a surplus of $227 million in the first 9 months of 2024, a significant improvement from a surplus of $59.4 million that was recorded in the same period last year. To year end, the current account position is projected to record a surplus of $150.5 million and further improving to $277.4 million in 2025. This is driven mainly by the resilient diaspora remittances and as well as the projected narrowing of the direct trade deficit. Let me turn to the inflation profile, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, prices for goods and services have relatively been stable following the introduction of the Zimbabwe gold currency, the ZiG, on the 5th of April 2024. Month-on-month, ZiG inflation declined by minus 2.4% in May 2024 and averaged 0% in the second quarter of the year. We have a chart there showing the inflation profile. However, inflation pressures emerged in August to October in 2024, attributable to a surge in parallel market foreign exchange rate activities, which worsened inflation expectations. Consequently, the Reserve Bank and its Monetary Policy Committee implemented stabilization measures, which included increasing the bank policy rate and standardizing statutory reserve requirements for deposits. The Monetary Policy Committee and the Reserve Bank also allowed greater exchange rate flexibility and reduced the limit on foreign exchange individuals can take out of the country. The local currency also depreciated, while the amount that can be taken out of the country was also reduced. These measures have had a positive impact, as both the official and the parallel exchange rates have stabilized. In 2025, ZiG inflation is expected to remain stable, with an average month-on-month inflation of below 3% on the back of tight fiscal and monetary policies. Let me turn to the public finance developments and outlook to the end of 2024, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the performance during the first 9 months of the year, total revenue collections amounted to 62.4 billion ZiG against expenditures of 66.5 billion ZiG. You can see the slides again on the screen showing those numbers. Consequently, a budget deficit of 4.1 billion ZiG was recorded in the first 9 months of the year. Overall budget utilization by our ministries, departments and agencies, or MDAs for short, stood at 76% as at 30 September 2024. Taking into account recent developments in the foreign exchange market and civil servant salary reviews, total revenue collections to year end are projected at 110.7 billion ZiG, or 17% of GDP, while expenditures are expected to be 119.97 billion ZiG, which is 18.4% of GDP, resulting in a projected deficit of 9.3 billion ZiG, which is equivalent of minus 1.4% of GDP. Let me turn to the public debt situation. Mr. Speaker, sir, the nominal stock of total public and publicly guaranteed debt as of the end of September 2024 amounted to 524 billion ZiG, broken down as follows: external debt at 307 billion ZiG and domestic debt at 218 billion ZiG. In real terms, the total debt stood at $21.1 billion as at end of 2024, of which external debt amounted to $12.3 billion and domestic debt amounted to $8.7 billion. I now turn to the 2025 macroeconomic fiscal framework. Mr. Speaker, sir, in line with the projected GDP growth of 6% during 2025, revenue collections are estimated at 270.3 billion ZiG, which is 19.6% of GDP, comprising 218.2 billion tax revenues and 52.1 billion non-tax revenues. For what is worth, Mr. Speaker, sir, these figures are a major adjustment from what we saw when we had the retreat with the parliamentarians in Bulawayo. The 2025 fiscal framework therefore provides for overall expenditures of 276.4 billion ZiG, or 20.1% of GDP, with recurrent expenditures of 236.8 billion, or 17.2% of GDP, and acquisition of financial and non-financial assets, which really means capital expenditure, is set at 39.6 billion ZiG, which is about 2.9% of GDP. In US dollar terms, the fiscal framework translates to revenues of $7.5 billion and expenditures of $7.7 billion. Let me turn to the vote allocations, Mr. Speaker. During the 2025 national budget formulation stage, ministries, departments, and agencies, MDAs, submitted total bids of over 700 billion ZiG against an available budget envelope of 276.4 billion ZiG. This is more than double the ceiling of revenue collection capacity of 19.6% of GDP. The available resource envelope was allocated among the ministries, departments, and agencies as follows, and you see the slide on the screen, but I'll go through these one by one if they're too small to see. Let me turn to the issue of budget financing. Mr. Speaker, said the budget deficit of 6.1 billion, or 0.4% of GDP for 2025 reflects the need for fiscal consolidation and discipline against a background of high debt servicing obligations amounting to 19.2 billion ZiG, which now accounts for 7% of overall government expenditure outlays. Mr. Speaker said there are risks to the budget projections. Mr. Speaker said the macro fiscal framework, which is guiding the budget, faces risks, which, if not mitigated, will put pressure on public finances, posing serious ramifications on overall macroeconomic stability. Such risks relate to macroeconomic shocks, natural disasters, contingent liabilities, geopolitical tensions, declining commodity prices, expenditure outlays outside the approved budgetary provisions, among others. Let me go deeper, Mr. Speaker, into the 2025 national budget strategic priority areas. The 2025 national budget focuses on enhancing macroeconomic stability and significantly improving the environment for doing business, as well as delivery of social services to enhance the human capital base of the country. On economic growth and macro stability, Mr. Speaker said, under this pillar, the thrust of the budget is to entrench price and exchange rate stability, as well as to enhance acceptance of the local currency, the ZiG, through the deployment of appropriate and complementary fiscal and monetary policy tools. On the fiscal front, the government will ensure the alignment of expenditure outlays to available resources while prioritizing development and social expenditures. To complement these fiscal efforts, the Monetary Authority's interventions in the agricultural sector will be guided by the Agriculture, Food Systems and Rural Transformation Strategy and the Agriculture Recovery Plan. To support these interventions, 22.9 billion ZiG has been set aside for the Ministry of Lands, Agriculture, Fisheries, Water and Rural Development during the 2025 to cater for the following areas, among others: dam construction, irrigation development, rural development 8.0 support, contracting and procurement of grain for our strategic grain reserve, National Enhanced Agriculture Productivity Scheme, and the Agriculture Productive Social Protection Scheme, of Fumvudza Intwasa for short, among others. Turning to the mining sector, the mining sector is projected to grow by 2.3% in 2024, which is lower than the initial projection on account of subdued performance of the PGM's group of minerals attributable to low commodity prices or lower commodity prices in general. In 2025, the sector is projected to grow at 5.6%, primarily driven by anticipated growth in PGMs, gold, chrome, and diamond outputs. An amount of 664 million ZiG has been allocated to the Ministry of Mines and Mining Development in order for them to manage this sector and provide a conducive mining environment for mineral exploration and mineral beneficiation. Let me turn to the manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector is now projected to grow by 2% in 2024 and is expected to pick up growth in 2025 and grow by 3.1%. This is driven by increased agricultural output, which will stimulate agro-processing industries, particularly in the drinks and beverages subsectors. To support the implementation of the Zimbabwe Industrial Reconstruction and Growth Plan of 2024 and 2025, 550.9 million ZiG is being allocated to the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. This also includes support for a development finance fund for funding new industries in line with the plan. I now turn to tourism, Mr. Speaker. The tourism industry is projected to grow by 4.3% in 2025, benefiting from enhanced visa facilitation, investments in tourism infrastructure, the housing of both domestic and the hosting of both domestic and international events, as well as tourism product diversification. To support the operations of the Ministry of Tourism and Hospitality Industry, an amount of 294.6 million ZiG has been set aside to enable them to advance the growth of the sector, as well as to establish the country as a tourist destination of choice. On the screen, Mr. Speaker, you will see the recovery in international tourism, which is a consistent picture right across the world since COVID. Let me turn to climate. The Zimbabwe National Climate Change Adaptation Plan, NAP of 2024 to 2030, paves the way for the implementation of suitable adaptation measures to reduce the country's vulnerability to climate change in line with the National development contributions, NDCs. Therefore, the 2025 national budget has set aside 516.8 million ZIG for the Ministry of Environment, Climate and Wildlife to implement the following: the hosting of COP 2015 of the Ramsar Convention, and the SADC Transfrontier Conservation Summit, the Presidential Legacy Forest Project, the restoration of wetlands, also to facilitate the rehabilitation of degraded land in mining areas. And finally, resources are being set aside for upgrading of Zimpac's infrastructure. Let me turn to infrastructure, ICT, and the whole digital economy agenda. Mr. Speaker said, during 2025, outlays under the Public Sector Infrastructure Investment Program seeks to address infrastructure gaps in support of sustainable economic growth without putting pressure on stability of the domestic currency. The targeted projects will maximize synergies between sectors, positively impact on productivity, building resilience, allowing the country to seize opportunities and innovate in a rapidly evolving global landscape. Therefore, resources amounting to 58.6 billion ZIG will be availed towards infrastructure investment, inclusive